Few remember their name. No monument honors them, and yet they were Rome's deadliest sword. The Evocati were not ordinary soldiers. They were living legends, shadows among the ranks, veterans who had already given everything, and yet returned when Rome needed them. But over time, the empire they had sworn loyalty to grew afraid of them. And when an emperor fears his best men, history begins to be written with lies. Who were the Evocati, really? Why did Rome grant them absolute power, only to later try to erase them from history? In this video, you're going to discover the truth about the secret unit that operated from the shadows. Warriors with forbidden weapons immune to the chain of command, who chose for themselves when and how to fight. Men capable of changing the fate of a battle with a single strike. But Rome made a mistake. It created soldiers that could not be controlled. And what happened next was a betrayal too dangerous for the history books to tell. Don't go anywhere. This is only getting better. What you're about to learn isn't taught in any history class. On the battlefields of the Roman Empire, every legionary knew exactly whom to obey. Orders came down from the generals, passed through the centurions, and were carried out without question. All except them, the Evocati. They didn't carry shields adorned with imperial eagles, nor did they march in formation like automatons. They had already served, already bled for Rome, and when they retired with honor, no one expected them to return. But they came back, and not as ordinary soldiers. They returned as a secret caste, a veteran elite, a handful of warriors feared as much by the enemy as by their own commanders. The Evocati were former legionaries, who, after receiving their rightful discharge and privileges for years of service, chose voluntarily to return to the ranks. But they didn't accept just any conditions. They weren't subject to ordinary discipline. They didn't obey just any centurion. They answered only to the supreme general, and when they were given a mission, they knew it was because Rome needed something no one else could do. But the most unsettling thing was their autonomy. The Evocati didn't just come back to fight, they returned with power. They chose their weapons, their timing, their style of combat. They commanded detachments, acted as spies, and sometimes even as silent execution. Among common legionaries, their name was spoken with respect. Among senator, with fear. To be called an Evocatos wasn't just an honor, it was a sentence, one that few dared to accept. Because before returning to the front, a veteran had to pass the most brutal test of his life. It wasn't enough to have fought. You had to prove that you could still die for Rome or kill for her. The first filter, the body, fought as marches for days in full armor with no food or water, enemy terrain, extreme climates, no camps or reinforcements. Evocati recruits were abandoned in hostile regions and had to return alone or never return at all. It was a way to know who was still useful and who had aged in vain. But the real filter was the mind. They had to execute orders without flinching. Orders like eliminating former comrades accused of treason or sacrificing innocent prisoners to prove total obedience to the empire. After this blood ritual, the survivors were initiated in possible missions: infiltration behind enemy lines, sabotage of fortresses, political assassinations, opening city walls from the inside. They dressed as merchants, beggars, or deserters. They learned barbarian languages, imitated their customs, and waited for the exact moment to strike, like ghosts of the empire. While the rest of Rome was still planning the offensive, the Evocati were already inside, and when victory was celebrated in the public squares, no one knew they had been the spark that started it all. Unlike the common legionary who wielded a standard gladius, the Evocati carried weapons designed exclusively for them. Longer, curved swords, inspired by Eastern enemies, ideal for swift attacks and lethal cuts. Hidden daggers, poisons, ropes with hooks, instruments of stealth and assassination. They were not just warriors, they were artists of combat. But their deadliest advantage wasn't visible. Evocati mastered technological terror. They walked in complete silence before battle, dressed in black with empty stares that said, "Today you die." Some went as far as tattooing death symbols. Others painted their faces like specters. Their mere presence caused desertions. Enemies preferred to flee than face them. One of their best-kept secrets was their forbidden weapons. Spears with serrated blades, impossible to heal from. Shields with hidden blades, blinding powders to disorient enemies during ambushes. Everything forbidden in the legions was perfected by the Evocati. They fought without rules, killed without honor, and won without mercy. While legionaries slept in cold tents, the Evocati rested in private quarters. They had servants, were exempt from manual labor. They didn't build camps, didn't dig trenches. They were soldiers, yes, but also nobles of war. They could choose missions, refuse to march, receive advance payments. Some amassed more wealth than senators, and that's when fear was born. What happens when a soldier no longer needs the empire? What happens when military power becomes political power? The Senate grew suspicious. The Evocati no longer obeyed blindly. They negotiated with generals, influenced strategies. Sometimes they changed them. Rome realized it had created a monster, a class of independent warriors with the power to destroy or to rule. The unthinkable happened. A group of Evocati rebelled. They took strongholds, disobeyed orders, and for the first time in centuries, Rome had to fight its own soldiers. They knew every weak point of the legions, how to break formations, how to infiltrate headquarters, how to sow chaos from within. They were the perfect creation, now turning on their creator. Rome responded with brutality. It sent troops, executed leaders, confiscated lands, and erased their names. Literally, official records omitted their existence. Their victories were attributed to others. Their tactics absorbed by standard units, and so the Evocati vanished from written history. But did they really disappear? Some survived. Others hid, and their legacy, more alive than ever, was passed down in the shadows. Rome erased them from its books, but couldn't erase their mark from the battlefield. The tactics of infiltration, sabotage, psychological warfare, and autonomous leadership endure in special units, in silent squadrons, in strategies no one dared to credit them with. For centuries, echoes of their methods leaked through, in the Crusaders, in the Knights Templar, even in modern commandos. Because what is born in shadow never dies, it just changes form. Where are the last Evocati? Their descendants, their code of war, perhaps in some unknown unit, perhaps in a lost manuscript, perhaps closer than we imagine. They were the most feared warriors of Rome, the ones who faced the impossible, the ones who returned when all others had fallen, the ones who defied the empire itself and still left a mark that neither time nor power could erase. What do you think? Did Rome destroy them, or create a legend that can never be extinguished? Let me know in the comments. Subscribe, because in this series, each video reveals a secret history tried to bury. See you in the next chapter.